In the quiet streets of London in 1971, long before people had mobile phones or security cameras on every corner, there was a small leather shop on Baker Street called Lysac. The shop sat among cafes, newsstands, and other ordinary places, and nothing about it seemed special. People walked past it every day without a second look. But if someone had stepped inside the shop and gone down the stairs to the basement, they would have discovered something strange, just something that would soon become one of the most famous crimes in British history. Beneath the floorboards, hidden under wooden panels and sheets, lay the entrance to a secret tunnel that stretched under the street. And that tunnel was the key to a daring, unbelievable robbery that would shock the country. The whole idea came from a quiet man named Anthony Gavin, who was clever, patient, and known for planning crimes that required brains more than brawn. He was not a violent man. He didn't like guns or dramatic confrontations. He preferred silence, shadows, and careful thinking. Gavin had noticed something interesting about the Lloyds Bank down the street. The bank was strong, well protected, and full of safety deposit boxes belonging to wealthy people, business owners, and private customers. These boxes held gold, jewelry, cash, secret papers, and valuable items that people wanted to keep safe. The bank had alarms on the doors, windows, and walls, but one part of it was unprotected: the floor. No one had ever tried to break into a bank by tunneling underneath it. No one believed anyone would try. That was exactly why Gavin thought it might work. To make his plan possible, Gavin needed a base somewhere close to the bank where he could start digging. He walked up and down the street, looking carefully at the buildings. Eventually, he found the perfect spot: the basement of Lysac. The shop was small, quiet, and often empty. Most importantly, it stood only a short distance from the bank. If a tunnel could reach under the street and then rise into the floor of the vault, the gang could enter without setting off any alarms. Gavin rented the shop using a fake name. He told the landlord he wanted to sell handbags and leather goods. The landlord believed him, and no one in the neighborhood suspected a thing. Once the shop was theirs, the real work began. The basement became the starting point of the tunnel. Gavin brought in a small group of trusted partnersmen who could dig, who could keep quiet, and who were willing to work long hours in darkness and dirt. They ripped up the wooden floorboards and made a hole in the ground beneath. At first the digging was easy, just soft soil, but as the tunnel grew longer, the work became harder. The air underground was heavy and hot. Dust filled their lungs. Their arms ached from swinging tools. They worked mostly at night and on weekends, when nearby shops were closed and fewer people were around to hear the sounds of hammers and shovels. They had to be extremely careful. If someone walking by heard strange noises coming from underground, everything would be ruined, so the team used walkie-talkies to stay in touch. One man always remained above ground near the shop, watching the street. He would warn the men below if he saw anyone acting curious or if police officers were nearby. The men underground worked slowly, measuring every inch, reinforcing the walls of the tunnel with wood so it wouldn't collapse. They removed soil in bags and hid it around the basement, covering the piles with boards and cloths. No one who entered the shop would guess that a tunnel was growing beneath their feet. Week after week, month after month, the tunnel grew longer, winding under the street like a secret route to treasure. As they got closer to the bank, the soil changed. It became harder, filled with stones and pieces of old foundations. They had to use stronger tools. The noise grew louder, so they slowed down even more. But eventually, after countless hours of backbreaking work, they reached the concrete floor of the vault. This was the final barrier. Breaking through would require heat, drills, and metal cutters. They had to do it carefully so the floor wouldn't crack too loudly or too suddenly. By early September 1971, everything was ready. The gang chose the weekend of September 4th to 5th for their final break-in because the bank would be closed and the streets quieter. On Saturday night, they climbed into the tunnel, carrying bags of tools and flashlights. They crawled all the way to the end, feeling the weight of earth above them and knowing that only a few inches of concrete separated them from the bank vault. Gavin gave the signal and they began cutting through the concrete. The work was slow, messy, and extremely dangerous. At any moment, the noise could alert someone. A piece of concrete could fall and injure them, but they were careful. They took shifts, working in silence except for the hiss of tools. Finally, with a loud crack that made them freeze for a moment, the concrete broke. A hole opened into the dark vault. The men climbed through the opening one by one. Inside, the vault felt cool and still, like a sealed-off cave. The metal boxes lining the walls reflected the beams of their flashlights. They had done it. No alarms rang. No guards appeared. Everything the bank had trusted to keep the vault safe had failed. The robbers moved quickly but calmly. They pried open the safety deposit boxes with tools and hammers. Metal bent, locks snapped, and valuables spilled out. Watches, rings, cash, gold bars, documents, necklaces, and precious stones filled the boxes. They put everything they could into bags. They joked quietly to one another, amazed that their plan had actually worked. The vault contained the treasures and secrets of hundreds of people. Some of the items were worth millions. Other items were worth little money but might have held dangerous secrets. The gang took almost everything they found. Up above, the city slept. The streets were quiet. The bank, with all its alarms and security, gave no sign of trouble. It seemed the perfect crime. But at that very moment, something strange and unexpected was happening miles away. In a small house in North London, a man named Robert Rowland sat in his room, adjusting the dial of his ham radio. He was a hobbyist. He spent many nights listening to faraway radio signals, never knowing what he might hear. That night, his radio crackled with voices. He listened closely, expecting a conversation between taxi drivers or security guards. But what he heard made him sit up straight. "Are you there? Move the bags over. We're nearly done. Watch for anyone outside. We're in the vault." Rowlands couldn't believe his ears. He listened again. The voices were calm but serious. They spoke about digging, about boxes, about lookouts. At first, he wondered if it might be boys playing a prank or someone pretending to commit a robbery. But the more he listened, the more he realized the voices were real and the situation was serious. He called the police immediately. He explained that he could hear people committing a robbery right that moment. It sounded unbelievable, but he insisted it was true. The police took his report seriously, but had a huge problem. Rowlands could hear the robbers, but he didn't know where they were. London was full of banks, and the robbers' radio signals did not reveal their location. Police officers drove all over the city that night, checking banks, shining flashlights through windows, climbing ladders to check rooftops, but nothing seemed out of place. The robbers were underground, hidden beneath the earth, and the police officers searching above had no idea they were only a few feet away from the crime. By the time the gang finished their work and crawled back through the tunnel, London remained unaware. The robbers packed their bags, cleaned up what they could, and left the shop before dawn. They disappeared into the city, carrying more wealth than some people earn in a lifetime. Everything remained quiet until Monday morning. When the bank staff unlocked the vault and walked inside, they were met with a shocking sight. The vault looked like a storm had passed through it. Deposit boxes were broken open, their contents missing or scattered on the floor. The thick concrete slab in the floor had a hole carved through it. Immediately, the police were called. When they heard about the hole and the missing treasure, they remembered Rowland's strange report. They hurried to investigate the buildings nearby. When they reached Lissac and inspected the basement, they found the tunnel. Their surprise and disbelief quickly turned into determination. They followed the trail of clues, interviewing neighbors, examining rental records, and gathering evidence. It took time, but eventually the police traced the operation back to Gavin and his team. Gavin had made mistakes. He had used fake names but had been recognized by some who had seen him near the shop. Other members of the gang left behind fingerprints, receipts, or clues that pointed in their direction. One by one, the key robbers were arrested, tried, and sent to prison. But not everyone involved was identified. Some members of the gang simply vanished, taking their share of the treasure with them. Much of the stolen wealth was never recovered. Many people believe that some of the stolen items included secret or embarrassing documents belonging to powerful individuals. There were whispers that the government tried to hide certain details to avoid scandals. Some believed the police were told not to talk about certain deposit boxes. Whether or not these rumors were true, they added a layer of mystery to the story, making people wonder what really lay inside those boxes before they were broken open. Over the years, the Baker Street robbery became a story told in books, newspapers, and films. It captured people's imagination because it was daring, unusual, and strangely poetic, a crime carried out in silence, beneath the ground with no violence, no alarms, and no weapons. It was the kind of story that made people shake their heads in disbelief. The idea of men crawling underground for weeks, hidden from the city above, seemed almost unreal. The idea that the crime was discovered because someone randomly overheard their radio signals made the story even stranger. Today, more than 50 years later, people still talk about the Baker Street robbery. It remains one of the most famous heists in British history, not because of the amount stolen, but because of the method, the mystery, and the way the story unfolded like a piece of fiction. It is a tale of patience, danger, luck, and the unexpected twist of fate that brought everything crashing down. The robbers planned almost everything perfectly, yet they could not plan for the strange trick of radio waves carrying their voices to the ears of a man sitting quietly at home on a Saturday night. It is a reminder that even the best planned crimes can be undone by something completely unpredictable. And it is a reminder that beneath the quiet streets we walk every day, there may be stories, secrets, and tunnels of history that run much deeper than we think.